September 20th, 1942. At Naval Air Station, North Island in San Diego, California, Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders sat in the cockpit of an aircraft that should not have been in American hands. The instrument panel was in Japanese. The controls felt foreign, and his palms were sweating despite the cool Pacific air. This captured Mitsubishi A6M20 was for the moment the most valuable aircraft in the world. As Sanders released the brakes, he was about to make history as the first American to fly it. This single test flight would expose the fatal flaws in Japan's feared fighter, fundamentally transforming American tactics and dooming Japan's dominance in the air. The secrets locked within this machine would help create a weapon that would shoot down over 5,000 enemy aircraft and turn the tide of the Pacific War. The extraordinary journey of this Zero began 5 months earlier, on June 4, 1942. The same day, American dive bombers were destroying 4 Japanese aircraft carriers at the Battle of Midway. In the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, a smaller, equally transformative drama was unfolding. 19-year-old Flight Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga launched his Zero from the carrier Ryujo as part of a diversionary strike against Dutch Harbor. His morning mission was initially a success. The Zero performed exactly as designed, proving faster and more maneuverable than anything the Americans had. But a single bullet, likely from a .5 caliber machine gun on the ground, struck Koga's plane, severing the oil return line. With oil spraying and his engine destined to seize, Koga turned toward Akutan Island, designated as an emergency landing site. He spotted what appeared to be a perfect, flat, grassy field. As Koga made his approach with landing gear extended, his wingman, Petty Officer Tugo Shikard, noticed something chilling: water glistening between the grass stalks. The field was a bog, concealing knee-deep mud. Shikard's radio warning came too late. Koga's wheels touched down, and for a brief moment the landing seemed successful, but then the main gear sank into the soft mud. The lightweight fighter flipped over in a violent cartwheel, slamming upside down into the bog. The force snapped Koga's neck instantly. His wingmen, bound by standing orders to destroy any disabled Zero to prevent its capture, circled the crash site, machine guns ready. The aircraft looked so intact, sitting inverted in the marsh, that they could not bring themselves to fire, hoping their comrade was alive and trapped. With fuel running low, they reluctantly returned to their carrier. Koga's body and his Zero remained alone for 5 weeks, waiting to betray every secret of the Empire's most feared weapon. The crash site remained hidden until July 10, 1942, when Lieutenant William Tice, piloted by a PBY Catalina patrol bomber, became lost in the treacherous Aleutian fog. Correcting course for Dutch Harbor, Tice chose to fly directly over Akutan Island. Machinist mate Albert Knack, serving as plane captain, glanced down through a temporary gap in the fog and spotted an unusual shape in the marsh. The bright red circles on the wings were unmistakable. The Zero appeared remarkably intact, a prize beyond imagination. A recovery party was immediately dispatched. They found that the soft bog had acted like a giant shock absorber, cushioning the impact and preventing the aircraft from shattering, ensuring it was fundamentally intact despite the inversion. The recovery team buried Koga with military honors and then began the grueling 3-week task of extracting the fighter from the mud, eventually winching it half a mile to the coast for loading onto a barge. The captured Zero arrived in Seattle on August 1, 1942, and was soon transported to Naval Air Station North Island, San Diego, California. The news of the capture spread with electric excitement. For the first time, American engineers and pilots could examine the legendary fighter in detail. Navy Captain William Leonard called it a treasure that unlocked so many secrets. The race was on to restore the Zero to flying condition. Working around the clock, the restoration team documented every detail while repairing the crash damage. The Zero was a marvel of design philosophy, built like a precision watch for minimum weight and maximum efficiency. It weighed between 5,300 and 6,165 pounds fully loaded, roughly 2,000 pounds lighter than the American F-4F Wildcat. This remarkable weight savings was achieved by sacrificing pilot armor and using non-self-sealing fuel tanks, a profound difference from the American emphasis on pilot protection and structural ruggedness. The Zero was designed to win through superior agility, not by absorbing punishment. On September 20th, 1942, just 41 days after arriving in San Diego, the Zero was ready to fly, repainted with American insignia over the red Japanese Hinomaru circles. Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders, selected as chief test pilot, had spent the previous week intensely studying the foreign aircraft. Sanders advanced the throttle, and the Zero accelerated down the runway with surprising eagerness, lifting off after a remarkably short ground roll. For the next hour, Sanders explored its flight envelope, and what he discovered would change the course of the Pacific Air War. He found two critical, exploitable weaknesses. First, the ailerons froze up at speeds above 200 knots, about 230 miles per hour. The fabric-covered control surfaces ballooned with air pressure, making rolling maneuvers slow and heavy, while American fighters, with their metal-covered, often hydraulically boosted controls, maintained full authority. Second, during negative acceleration maneuvers, such as pushing the stick sharply forward in a dive, the float-type carburetor would cut fuel flow, causing the Zero's engine to cough and die. For several seconds, the Zero became a powerless glider. Sanders immediately recognized the profound tactical implications. For American pilots being outmaneuvered by the Zero's superior low-speed turning capability, the answer was now clear. Go into a vertical powered dive using negative acceleration if possible, then execute a hard right roll at high speed where the Zero could not follow. Sanders completed 24 test flights over 25 days, accumulating extraordinary data. While the Zero had exceptional range, over 1,900 statute miles, and a significantly better climb rate than the F-4F Wildcat, its light construction meant it could not withstand battle damage. Its lack of armor and self-sealing fuel tanks made it fragile. Sanders' final report synthesized all this data into actionable intelligence. American pilots were instructed to avoid slow-speed turning fights and instead use diving attacks, high-speed rolls, and rely on their superior armor and firepower to absorb hits while delivering devastating bursts that would destroy the fragile Zero.
These recommendations were distributed with unprecedented speed, incorporated into training programs, and were a monumental boost to American pilot morale. The Akutan Zero destroyed the mystique of Japanese invincibility, but the captured aircraft's greatest contribution was to aircraft design, specifically to a fighter already under development, the Grumman F-6F Hellcat. The F-6F's basic design predated Koga's crash, with the formal contract signed a year earlier. However, in the early months of 1942, alarming combat reports from the Pacific confirmed the F-4F Wildcat was inadequate. The Navy urgently needed a plane that would go upstairs faster. In a critical decision on April 26, 1942, before the Zero was even discovered, the Bureau of Aeronautics directed Grumman to install the 2,000-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine in the second prototype. This 50% power increase was a quantum leap in performance. The first prototype with the less powerful engine flew on June 26, 1942, and the second, more powerful prototype, the XF6F3, flew on July 30, 1942. The physical and later flight analysis of the Akutan Zero arrived at a crucial time. The F-6F's basic design was set, but production had not yet begun, meaning changes could still be easily incorporated. Grumman founder Roy Grumman made a key decision after studying Zero data. The Hellcat would not sacrifice protection for performance. The F-6F would weigh over 12,000 pounds, more than double the Zero's weight. But this would be compensated for by the power of the R2800 engine. The Hellcat would be built tough, with pilot armor, a bulletproof windscreen, and self-sealing fuel tanks. The intelligence from the Akutan Zero directly influenced the F-6F's final design. The Hellcat's metal-covered, hydraulically boosted ailerons ensured full control authority at all speeds, directly eliminating the high-speed roll problem Sanders discovered in the Zero. Its pressure carburetor ensured the engine would continue running under negative acceleration, eliminating the weakness Sanders had exploited in his tests. The F-6F structure was designed for high G-forces, meaning Hellcat pilots could use aggressive maneuvers that risked breaking up a Zero. The armament was increased to 6.5 caliber machine guns for concentrated firepower. The first production F-6F3 flew on October 3, 1942, just 2 weeks after Sanders finished his initial test flights. The timing was deliberate. Production had been delayed to incorporate the latest intelligence. The Hellcat was not designed based on the Zero, but it was refined based on the knowledge gained from it. The F-6F began reaching fleet squadrons in early 1943. Pilots were enthusiastic. The Hellcat was faster, climbed better, had more firepower, and felt solid. Grumman had made it remarkably easy to fly, stable, predictable, and forgiving for the mass of relatively inexperienced pilots joining the fleet. At peak production in 1944, Grumman was producing 1 Hellcat per hour, a staggering industrial record. Between late 1942 and the end of the war, 12,275 F-6F Hellcats were produced from a single factory complex. The Hellcat made its combat debut on August 31, 1943. The tactical lessons from the Akutan Zero were incorporated into every aspect of F-6F operations. Doctrine emphasized high-speed slashing tacks, diving from altitude, making a single pass, and zooming back to altitude. The thatch weave, a tactic of mutually supporting pairs of fighters, was standard, neutralizing the Zero's turning advantage by forcing a head-on engagement where the F-6F's protection and firepower dominated. The first major test of the new fighter came on November 23, 1943, over Tarawa. 30 Zeros rose to intercept the American strike. When the smoke cleared, American pilots claimed 30 Japanese fighters destroyed for the loss of a single F-6F. This battle validated the F-6F's design and the tactical doctrines developed from studying the Akutan Zero. The age of Japanese air superiority was over. The F-6F's dominance peaked on June 19, 1944, during the Battle of the Philippine Sea, known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japanese carrier aviation was systematically destroyed, with 370 aircraft launched and only 130 returning. F-6F Hellcats shot down the vast majority. The Japanese naval air groups, painstakingly rebuilt after Midway, were annihilated, a catastrophic blow from which Japanese naval aviation would never recover. By the end of World War II, F-6F Hellcats were credited with destroying 5,163 enemy aircraft in Pacific air-to-air combat by U.S. Navy and Marine Corps pilots. Only 270 F-6Fs were lost in air-to-air combat, giving the aircraft an overall kill-to-loss ratio of 19-1. Against Japanese Zero specifically, the ratio was 13-1. The F-6F produced more fighter aces than any other Allied aircraft, including the Navy's top ace, Commander David McCampbell, who scored all 34 of his victories flying Hellcats. The dominance was so complete that late-war Japanese pilots developed Zero fatigue, increasingly avoiding combat with the Hellcat. The contrast with 1942 was stark. American pilots had fled Zeros. By 1945, Japanese pilots were fleeing Hellcats. The Akutan Zero's role in this transformation is undeniable. It provided the first detailed intelligence on the Zero's capabilities and limitations. Sanders' test flights revealed the exploitable weaknesses, And the technical data influenced aircraft design decisions at a crucial moment. Most importantly, it shattered the myth of the Zero's invincibility. The F-6F was not designed because of the Zero, but it was refined based on the knowledge gained from it. It resulted in an integrated system that overwhelmed Japanese aviation. Ironically, the Akutan Zero was destroyed in February 1945, not in combat, but in a training accident when an SB-2C Helldiver dive bomber lost control and crashed into the Part Zero, slicing it to pieces. The physical aircraft was gone, but its legacy lived on in every F-6F that flew combat missions and in every pilot who knew the Zero's weaknesses. The Zero was a crucial piece of the puzzle, arriving at exactly the right moment to influence aircraft design and tactical doctrine. The 19-to-1 kill ratio was the culmination of multiple factors: superior aircraft design, tactical doctrine derived from studying the enemy's weaknesses, and industrial production that ensured numerical superiority. As one former fighter ace explained, "We were told the Zero was invincible. Then we learned its secrets from the captured plane in Alaska, and suddenly it was no longer invincible. It was just another aircraft, one we could beat if we flew smart." The F-6F gave us the tools. The Akutan Zero gave us the knowledge. Together, they gave us victory. The story of the Akutan Zero and the F-6F Hellcat is proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not through destruction, but through understanding.